You're doing everything right. You're working. You're trying. You're not lazy. You know you're not lazy. But somewhere between your 20s and right now, you got the feeling that everyone else figured something out that you missed. That the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be just keeps getting wider. That you're running and still falling behind. That feeling has a name. And it's not failure. It's not weakness. And a man who lost everything, his wealth, his freedom, his son, wrote the exact answer to it 2,000 years ago. His name was Seneca, and what he wrote will change the way you see your life. We live in the most comparison-saturated moment in human history. Not just social media, though that's part of it. It's the LinkedIn post about someone your age closing a Series A. It's the college friend who bought a house. It's the cousin who figured out crypto or real estate or some business you don't fully understand. It's the invisible scoreboard that no one agreed to play on, but everyone checks. And the brutal thing about this scoreboard is that it only counts what other people have, not what you've built quietly, not what you've survived, not what you're still carrying, just the visible wins, the announcements, the milestones. Psychologists call this social comparison theory. We've been doing it since tribes, but the difference now is scale and speed. In 1950, you compared yourself to your neighborhood. Today, you compare yourself to 8 billion people, filtered to show only their best moments. The result: a generation that has more than any generation before it, and feels more behind than any generation before it. Seneca saw something like this coming. Not social media, obviously, but the disease underneath it. What he called the desperate need to measure your life against someone else's. He had a name for it, and a cure. In one of his most famous letters, written to his friend Lucilius, who was also wrestling with this feeling, Seneca wrote something that sounds almost too simple until you sit with it. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He wasn't talking about productivity. He wasn't telling Lucilius to wake up at 5 a.m. or optimize his morning routine. He was pointing at something deeper. Most people are not living their own time. They are living borrowed time. Time spent chasing a version of their life that belongs to someone else's expectations. Seneca identified 3 ways people waste the time they have. The first, they live in the past. Replaying decisions, mourning paths not taken, measuring today against what could have been. The man who is 35 and keeps returning to what he should have done at 25. That's not reflection, that's imprisonment. The second, they live in the future, deferring everything meaningful to a later version of themselves. When I have the money, when I have the title, when things settle down. Seneca called this people who are always about to start living. The third, and this is the one we don't talk about enough, they live in other people's present, not their own. They wake up and immediately check what everyone else is doing, building, announcing. They use other people's timelines as the measure of their own progress. The antidote, Seneca said, was radical. Reclaim your time by deciding whose timeline you're actually on. Not your parents', not your industry's, not LinkedIn's, yours. This isn't permission to be lazy. Seneca worked obsessively. He wrote more in a life of exile and political turmoil than most people write in comfort. He's talking about direction, not pace. The question isn't how fast are you moving? The question is whose finish line are you running toward? Seneca wrote this in a letter that deserves more attention than it gets. Withdraw into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual. Men learn while they teach. Notice what he's not saying. He's not saying ignore everyone. He's not saying become a hermit. He's saying, be deliberate about whose reality you let into yours. Every person you observe closely becomes a reference point. If you spend 4 hours a day watching people who are further ahead, in money, status, relationships, whatever the metric, your brain recalibrates what normal looks like, and you will always fall short of a standard you didn't set and can't reach. This is not a motivational problem. This is a calibration problem. Seneca's solution was what we today call intentional social input. He didn't consume randomly. He chose his inputs the way a craftsman chooses his tools, based on what the work requires, not what's available. Practically, this looks like audit who you're watching. Not to delete and disappear, but to ask, does following this person make me more focused on my own work or more anxious about theirs? One answer keeps you. the other cuts you. Replace comparison with apprenticeship. Seneca didn't envy successful people. He studied them. There's a difference. Envy is emotional. Apprenticeship is practical. When you see someone ahead of you, the stoic move is, what specifically did they do, and what of that is actually applicable to my situation? Measure against your past self, not their present self. This sounds cliché because it's been repeated without context. Seneca's version had teeth. He kept a daily journal, what he called his evening review, where he asked himself 3 questions. Not am I successful, but where did I fall short today? Where did I improve? What would I do differently? The comparison was always vertical, himself over time, never horizontal. Here's the part no one tells you about Seneca. He lost everything. Multiple times. He was exiled by Emperor Claudius at 42. Stripped of his wealth, his position, his home, sent to Corsica. He spent 8 years there. While his peers in Rome were advancing, accumulating, building, he was stuck on an island writing letters no one would read for centuries. By every visible scoreboard, he was behind. And it was during that exile that he wrote some of the most enduring philosophy in Western history. The letters that are still read today. The ideas we're talking about right now. When he finally returned to Rome and regained his influence under Nero, he didn't return as someone who'd wasted 8 years. He returned as someone who'd used 8 years that no one could measure. His observation from that period, one of the most uncomfortable things he ever wrote, was this. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who hankers after more. The feeling of being behind is not a report on your actual situation. It's a report on your appetite. Specifically, whether your appetite was set by you or by the market around you. People who feel behind are not behind. They are hungry for something they didn't choose to be hungry for. Seneca's prescription. Starve the appetite you didn't choose. Feed the one you did. This means getting painfully specific about what you actually want. Not the category, success, wealth, recognition, but the concrete thing. The actual number. The actual life. The actual day-to-day. Most people feel behind without knowing what ahead looks like. They're chasing a feeling, not a destination. And a chase without a destination is just exhaustion. The stoic move, the one Seneca made in exile, the one he recommended in every letter, was to sit down and define the life you're actually trying to build. Not the impressive version. Not the version your parents would approve of. The one you'd choose if no one was watching and no one was comparing. Then measure only against that. So let's go back to where we started. You're working. You're trying. And you feel behind. Seneca would tell you 3 things. First, you're not behind. You're on someone else's clock. The work, the real work, is figuring out whose clock you actually want to be on. Second, the comparison isn't coming from outside. It's a habit, a calibration. And like every habit, it can be interrupted, examined, and replaced with something that actually serves you. Third, and this is the one that should land hardest, the life Seneca built during his exile, the years that looked like nothing, produced everything he's remembered for. The quiet years are not lost years. They're the ones that compound. You're not behind. You're building something that doesn't show up on anyone else's scoreboard yet. And Seneca, writing from an island with no audience and no timeline, would tell you that's exactly where the real work gets done. If this hit something real for you, subscribe. Every week, we take one problem that's eating at people right now, and we find out what the ancients already solved. They had more time to think than we do. We might as well use it.